Surrounded by various marshal with their weapons drawn stood Red Demon, the leader of the demonic cult. Even while poisoned, the Red Demon easily kills everyone who attacks him with a smile on his face, as the attacker realizes the plan to exhaust him isn't going to work. The Red Demon looks on top of the hills as the people decide to finally join in declaring his end of his reign, calling the Red Demon Master, while the Red Demon is surprised to see the Blue Demon. They attack him with their weapon from all sides when he uses his demonic art and blows everyone away. Blue Demon in pain looks at him to see blades of heroes stuck to him as he stands still with a frown on his face. The Blue Demon, who admits he had misjudged his power, says he was in this situation due to his overwhelming power. The Red Demon asks if that's why he betrayed him, but he denies saying he betrayed because he tried to teach his demonic martial arts to normal followers and ignore the roots of the cult of the Heavenly Demon. The Red Demon then asks if the monk thought the same. The monk says the world was filled with more vile people than one could imagine if his martial arts became public. The evils would gain power without cultivation, leading to chaos, which couldn't be ignored. He calls out them for using such petty reasoning as an excuse to retain the tiny amount of authority they had. The Blue Demon says that reason didn't matter, as the Red Demon was a person whom none could understand, leading to his death, saying he should be afraid of death. He chuckles, hearing that, and jumps forward, grabbing Blue Demon's throat, saying the death wasn't something to be afraid of, and what he should be afraid of is what comes after. While the other tells him to stop, pulls out blue tears that he had gifted the Blue Demon and stab him. As he grasps his last few breath, Red Demon comes close to his face, saying he should have known what it means to betray him, that he never forgot a grudge, slowly laying him on the floor. He looks at his hand as his eyes go blurry and understood he was going to die. As his life nears his end, he remembers a canned drink he drank in his life before, and thinks if he ever had another chance, he wished to have a simple, normal life as darkness falls in. He began hearing something waking up in a hospital bed. A nurse then asks if he was awake. In pain, he slowly sits up and asks where he was when he feels a sharp pain, the nurse telling him to not get up in panic. The nurse says his wounds have opened up, looking at the bandages, and runs to get the doctor. He looks around and understands that he is back. Jinho parents ask if there was wrong, hearing the doctor confused. The doctor replies that the laceration on Jinho healed fast within a few days of admission. Getting a stare from the doctor, thought that he should have gone easy on his key meditation, and he should be more careful from now on. Jinho's parents ask if he is okay to hospital soon, but the doctor says to not be in a hurry even if he looks in good condition, as healing the damage inside is the important part. Jinho looks like his parents sign in relief. They tell Jinho they have to go to work and leave cash for him to use. After their goodbyes, he signs, thinking he needs time to get adjusted to the world after 20 years living in Zongyun as the Red Demon, though it did make sense to him as this was his 3RD life. He had already lived a life as Gang Jinho before he was sent to Zongyun. In his first life as Gang Jinho, he lost his family and legs in an accident and lived 15 years as a crippled man and ended his own life at 35. After he was started his life in Zongwan, which wasn't easy, but he was able to live as Red Demonic Master, which didn't last long either. Now he was sent back to the modern world, as though it rewound his life and it started before the accident happened. Both his lives were short-lived, that even adding both of them would be decades short for a full lifetime. They weren't good lives, but now with his memories of Gang Jinho and his experience as Red Demonic Master, he wanted to have a normal life like everyone. He stands in front of a vending machine looking at the drink that he has forgotten the name of due to his life in Zongwan. He keeps trying to insert a note into the machine without success until a girl tells him the machine doesn't take 10,000 won bill, calling him weird for not understanding even after trying so many times. Outside on a bench, he promises to pay the kid back, and the kid just tells him to drink it already. The kid asks why he is in the hospital, and Jinho says he was in a car crash. But the kid doesn't believe it as he didn't look sick and asks if he was pretending so he didn't have to go to school. Jinho replies he had no intention of doing so and asks the kid about his condition. The kid says he was born with a weak heart since he was born and it hurt terribly from time to time, and he didn't even care as everyone bullied him. Surgery didn't work as the heart was too small, so he felt sorry for his parents as he would never leave the hospital for the rest of his life. Understanding how her hardship in early life had made her mature, he concentrated on looking at Q's circulation and notices some of the meridians had clogs, and the uncirculated Qi were overflowing and damaging her body. The fix was to burst open the clogged median with stronger force when her mom calls out to her, and she leaves Jinho. Before she leaves, Jinho asks what she wanted to if she was better, and Yoon replied that he wanted to live like everyone else, and Jinho smiles hearing she wanted a normal life, and promises to pay her back while tossing the can away. He remembers that he had to go to school and wonders which class he was in as an 18-year-old, when a hooded guy with bloody legs walked past him. Jinho recognized the dangerous look in the guy's eyes. In a hospital bed, a doctor treats him while talking and leaves after having a conversation about the wound. As soon as the doctor leaves, he looks at a nearby scalpel. As the doctor talks to the nurse, a group of police comes and asks if he has seen someone with a gunshot wound on the leg. After thinking for some time, he realizes, but the guy has already disappeared. Yoon sits outside, bored, until the hoodie guy comes to him being chased by the police. He takes out the scalpel and takes Yoon hostage. He closes the TV to look out the window to notice police at the entrance of the hospital. He goes down, noticing a crowd talking about the serial killer and the hostage he had taken. He tries to leave, thinking it is none of his business, but hears Yoon scream, which he recognizes. He pushes through the crowd and sees Yuan is taken hostage, while the officer tries to negotiate, but the killer just laughs and tells the detective that negotiation wouldn't work, slightly stabbing, telling he should have known better. The officer tells him to stop in panic and realizes he is enjoying the situation, and he shouldn't stimulate him. The killer threatens the officer to open the way, or he will slit Yuan's wrist. He places the scalpel on the wrist, telling talks about how she would have 3 minutes to 1 hour to live if he did it. The officer understood he couldn't be let go, but had to let them go to save the kid's life. As the way opened up, Killer smiled, thinking he had won and calling them idiots for not abandoning the kid, and he had survived again. Jinho walks in front of him, and Yoon recognizes him. The killer is confused at first, then senses something making him tremble and freeze, as Jinho walks up to him and tells him to leave the child alone. All the fear clouds his judgment as he throws the hostage away to strike at Jinho, who easily snaps his arm and kicks him as he screams in pain, knocking him out. He gently pats Yoon's head and asks if he is okay. Yoon, who is stunned, slowly gets all her emotions and begins to cry as the officer orders to arrest the killer. Later, the officer interrogates Jinho, who just says he was indebted to the kid. He is reluctant but praises him for doing a good job, even if he should have done it, and thanks him for helping to catch the killer. He visits Yoon, but finds her unconscious. He asks if she is in pain, and the nurse replies that seizures are painful, but she tries to hide it. The nurse gives Jinho a Coke and tells Yoon that he has asked her to give it to him, as tells him to look after her till her mother arrives. Looking at the look, he smiles, saying he is indebted to her again. Knowing she wants a normal life, just like him, he decides to pay it back and starts placing his hand on her, injecting his kwai to heal her. Yoon and Jinho sit on a bench outside, drinking Coke, when Yoon says he looked like a hero when he came to save her during the incident. She asks if he was discharged, and wishes it was her. Jinho asked if she had gotten better, and she admitted, saying it used to hurt like 4 to 5 times a day, but got better since the day before. Even the doctor said she could leave sometime soon. She thanks him and says she hopes to meet again somewhere outside, and Jinho smiles and agrees. After being discharged and returning home, Jinho was greeted by the smell of his mother's cooking, and a sister who asked what was wrong with him with an irritated face, with everything that had happened. His sister had gone to some agency to become a celebrity, and guessed that's what was going on now. Mom tries to calm her down as he ends up saving a kid, and Young asks why she wasn't scolding him. Mom says she already had, and she tells her to stop bothering him while telling him to get ready for school tomorrow. In his room, he looks at his uniform and thinks he has to go to school if he wants to live a normal life, and sits down looking forward to it. The first day back was a midterm exam, and after a long time out of school, he rolled a pencil for answers. After the exam, one of his friends calls him and apologizes for not visiting him at the hospital. He remembers Inju, but not the other two, but says it was fine. Inju invites him to a PC cafe and offers to pay for him. As the four of them walk to the cafe, he remembers often playing with them and wondering if this is what it's like to have a normal life. As time passes, he begins adjusting to life and thinks that someday the red demonic master inside him will wither away and he will be able to live normal life. He still had a hard time understanding the class and wondered if he should start from elementary, when Ingyu just teased him and told him to give up and just practice his gaming skills instead. Behind, he hears a thud and sees Yumine being bullied Yusu. Jinho remembers him being famous in school for being a violent bully, as the faculty couldn't touch him as he was the grandson of the chairman. He did pity Yumine, but didn't want to get involved, so turns to sit down, until he heard Yusu calling Yumin a crippled freak, reminding him of his past life. Yusu keeps beating him while taunting him. One of the bullies, Su, a bucket mop washed water. He tells Mine to dump it on the teacher, and he will leave him alone. He looks around for help, but everyone looks away awkwardly. Bored, he just kicks the bucket, still taunting him. Jinho steps in, surprising men, and tells them to stop. Su asks who he is, but Jinho just tells Mine to go back to his seat. Men tries to say he is okay, so Jinho doesn't have to help, but Jinho tells him to not make him repeat himself. Su gets angry and slaps him, which he takes. He asks why Jinho was even helping the freak while trying to slap him again, which Jinho grabs. Jinho says, "What's about to happen is on him." Su tries to pull back, but is unsuccessful, so he tries to kick him. He easily deflects it with his other arm, grabs him behind the neck, and knees him in the guts, and finishes with a chop to his neck. Su's friend tries to walk away while warning, but Jinho stops them, telling them to clean the mess they have made, which they agree to. He walks back to his seat, and Ingyu asks if he knew he was the grandson of the chairman. Jinho says he did, and Ingyu asks why he did, as even the teachers can't touch that guy. Jinho said he was fine getting scolded when Min walked up to him, thanked him, and apologized for getting him involved in his problem. Jinho said he didn't do it for him, and just didn't like what was happening. He curses inside as if didn't hold back his urges. He might have killed him. He was able to hold back, and it seems his sense from past life still hadn't shaken off. The chairman walks in and asks if he was the one who hurt his grandson. Teacher admits that he was, and says he is scolding, but the chairman says if what he said was true, his grandson might have deserved it, which surprised Jinho. Chairman, as if his parents were called, and the teacher said they had been, and the chairman said to talk when they arrived, otherwise it wouldn't be fair to say he was here as a parent, and to forget about the titles. The teacher told the dad that Su was hospitalized, but Jinho refused to apologize. The dad calmly asked for full context. It wouldn't be right to simply force his child to apologize without knowing the context. He asked Jinho if he had assaulted Su. He admits that he did, but it happened because he was trying to stop him from bullying a classmate, and he was the one who struck first. The teacher calls him a liar, saying everyone in class said he had started it. The chairman stops the teacher and says if what he said was true, he should be apologizing. But the chairman stops and says it was only if what he said was true, and tells the teacher to call the student who was said to be bullied. The chairman smiled, saying they had gotten testimony, and asked how should they take care of this matter. Jinho called his father, but he told him to shut up and apologized. The chairman said it was fine, and asked the teacher what the usual punishment was. He'd tell it was 7 days suspension or expulsion. The dad lowers his head, apologizing profusely, asks for forgiveness, and pleads to not be expulsion. Looking at his dad's head bow, he feels humiliated. He had lived through strong oppressing the weak before. And this shouldn't matter, but he felt a very strong urge to kill him right there as chairman. Sits with a smile, telling them to go back for now, saying he will try to not get him expelled. On the ride back, Jinho tries to explain, but the dad says he knows that he would lie, and they were just in a bad position. He tells Jinho did the right thing by not bowing, and that if there came a situation when he had to lower himself when it wasn't his fault, he would do it instead. He was happy that his son could live proudly. Holding a lot of emotion behind, he apologized to his father again. Jinho was suspended for a week, and Sue was diagnosed with 6 weeks of hospitalization, making Jinho meet with authorities for assault. He was able to suppress his urges to take revenge because of his family, but the chairman didn't stop and started to dismiss his father and mother from their job unfairly, and his sister, who attended the same foundation, was bullied by teachers, and she returned home in tears. The landlord announced the raise in rent, and as Jinho was home due to suspension, he witnessed everything happen. One night he meets his father outside, drinking, who asks where he is going. He says he was just going for a walk. His father apologizes, saying none of this was his fault, and it was because of his incompetence. Hearing that, Jinho tells him to not say such thing, and says he will be back soon. As he watched his family suffer, he understood this wasn't just Sue's doing, it was a message from his Myung-gil, who was trying to ruin his family with his power. This place wasn't different than Zongyuan the Strong decided everything, just violence was replaced with wealth. He screams out loud and decided if wanted a normal life living quietly would work. If he wanted something, he would get it himself, as the past he tried to forget finally catches him. Sue sits in the bar laughing with his friends. One of them says that he is suspended, but Sue laughs, saying there will be more, and he will come back crawling, begging for forgiveness. As they walk out thinking about visiting a PC cafe, they notice one of them missing. The other one tries to call but fails and goes to find him. He feels something silent. He tries to call his friends, but fails. He begins kicking the wall in anger. When he hears a call, he thinks they must be back, but freezes when he notices it was Jinho. Sacred, he tries to threaten, but Jinho just asks if had any intention of undoing the things. He asks if he came to beg and begins taunting him. He punches Jinho's face, but feels pain in his fist instead. He thanks Sue for being like he though, and tells if he apologizes he will stop. Only if he can apologize. Sue is too confused and tired to talk, but notices his voice isn't coming out midway. Jinho kicks his legs, making him fall. He tries to ignore when he messed with him, as it wasn't the world he lived in. But he and his grandfather cross the line and breaks his arm. He says he barely remembered him, but seeing his father bow made his blood boil. And down on the ground, as he listened to Jinho, all he could think was to ask him to let him live. After a long session, all his limbs were broken. As he looked Jinho walk away, telling him to undo everything and he would keep an eye on him and not to do anything stupid, as this wasn't the end. He suddenly wakes up when his 2 friends find him. His friends ask questions, but he is too deep in thought trying to process what happened. In a station, Myung-gil complained to the officer, saying Jinho had assaulted him again, while they sat there silent. The officer said that the student had an alibi. Myung-gil tried to insist that his grandson was assaulted, but the officer just sighed, just asked to drop the charges, as his grandson had said to be heavily assaulted till the point of torture. But he looked fine, and although the diagnosis said 6 weeks of hospitalization, he was out wandering after 3 days. He tells them if they didn't drop charges, they would have to face counterclaim charge. Jinho's father and Myung-gil begin shouting at each other when Jinho notices Sue looking at him. He gives back a smirk, sending chills down Sue's back. Back home, afraid, he asked if Jinho appeared, and Myung-gil said he would be home. Myung-gil asks if he is sure it was Jinho. But seeing Sue angry at his doubt, he tells him to sleep and talk about it the next day. Sue, in a panic, tells Jinho was behind him, which he doesn't believe but gets knocked out. He asks Sue if he thought last night was a dream. He didn't think he would do something this stupid within a day. Sue tries to apologize, but he said he already gave him a chance, and he ignored it now. He had to pay for it first if he wanted to apologize. He grabs his face and injects his ki, making him suffer form eternally by illusions born from his fears. And his grandfather would have to witness him become miserable. Jinho walks away as Sue screams in fear. Jinho's dad wakes up the family early in the morning to show him a bicycle for himself and Jinho. Jinho just watches as his father and mother banter with each other, thinking his father is worried about him. He rides to bicycle to school, easily beating other vehicles. In school, Ingyu treats him normally while others are awkward, as they didn't stand up for him. But he didn't mind, as he didn't any expectation to feel betrayed. So was no longer in school, and his friends avoided him as well, making class peaceful. Outside the class, Seyun asks if really send Sue to the hospital. Not used to girl, he just stands awkwardly. While having small talk, she asks if he has grown taller, as she thinks he has changed. Jinho had used his Q-core to conduct body reformation, but did it slowly instead of whole body reformation. But she had easily realized it. Outward, he denies it. She leaves for class, reminding of promise to go to karaoke, which confuses Jinho. On the way, he sees Min, so stops the bicycle in front of him. He asks where he lives and says it wasn't what he was thinking, seeing his worried look. Min points at the top of the hill and tells him to get on so he can give him a ride. Min apologizes during the ride. Jinho asked why he did it. The orphanage he was living in was short of money when the landlord asked them to get out. And with the orphanage closed, the kids would have to split up. As everyone there was handicapped, they might get bullied if they go somewhere else. Jin had offered to support the orphanage if he had just said yes, and he could refuse the offer. Jinho says at least he got to continue living there, but the chairman hasn't contacted him since then, and he knew he would help as well. He apologizes that if he knew something like this would happen, he wouldn't have helped Sue. Min says he will do everything to get the suspension off the record, but Jinho tells to not worry about the trivial matter, as he is sure what he would have done. His family was on hook and accepts apology. Back home, Jinho asked where his father was, and the mother said he was late as the workplace ends a bit late, and she was also going to work again the next week. She told him to not worry, and that they were fine as long as he and his sister were well. The time in the modern world and conversation with his parents and Min taught him one thing. He needed money. With enough money, Sue wouldn't have looked down on him, and his family wouldn't have suffered. He needed a fortune, but manual labor wasn't possible due to his parents, and he didn't have seed money to buy stocks. He thinks of a way to earn seed money and stumbles into a post which helps him realize there is something he could do with power and experience. From Zongyun. Though it was a bit extreme, he wasn't going to be picky anymore. He visits Jung-hoo, who is the chairman of a company, and offers him half a day to decide the price for his life. He was a very successful businessman who collapsed due to illness, leading to his company fracture as the three sons fight for the right to the company. Young Guy visited him for his weekly report of the company and said this was his final report, as the next chairman had been decided. And he was fired today, as he reports everything. He wonders if that's what they put their effort for, as all that's left was robbed company with empty glory. Nearly breaking down, he wished to see the strong and powerful him that made him dream one more time he could die in peace. Someone informs the time is up, and he says goodbye and bows for having such a farewell, hoping to serve him again in the afterlife. At night, Jinho visits him again and asks why he hadn't got up, and if he had lost his will to live. In the past year, all he could do was pray as his children visited him, just to glare at him with hopes of his death, and his subordinate kept reporting to him every week. Then he came, and he didn't care how he cured him, nor if he was devil or an angel, as this was his last chance he didn't to waste it by making a premature move, possibly annoying him. Jinho smiled, feeling the same aura as Master. He found something only he could: cure an ill billionaire and demand money in return. The situation and ambitions of Jung-hoo made him perfect fit for his business. Jin-ho states the term of the deal was him healing him per month, while he wanted a big check. Jung-hoo asks if his life was worth only a single check, and Jin-ho changes the term to per year instead, which he agrees to. Jung-hoo signs, finding him to be such a clumsy negotiator as he got profit for himself. He asks where the money should be sent, which stuns him as he hadn't thought that far. Jung-hoo says he will find a way, just ask him where to bring it. He asks for trust with stretched hand and promises to keep it a secret as a business partner. After some time he tells his identity, which surprises Jung-hoo. He tells he will visit when things are read and Jin-ho agrees to, and goes back. As he looks out the window, he thinks he should keep Jin-ho close for Kyung's sake. Jing-hoo, who made Ga Yu-min investigate Jin-ho, asks for the report. He hands over everything he found and wonders who the boy is. He isn't impressed with the report and asks if there is anything else. After thinking for a bit, he tells him about his change in personality after a recent accident, which could also be the result of the accident. But he did find something odd. Every time he tailed him, it felt like he was being watched instead. Then brings up the issue that had with the Dongmyeong Foundation, which owned the school. Though it started as a simple student fight, there were signs of unfair dismissal of Jin-ho's parents. Hearing about this, Jing-hoo gets excited about finding a way to earn some points. When asked about the foundation, Ju-min says it was stable financially, only had a lot of signs of corruption. Hoo asks his age and asks if he was interested to take a job. Back in Sue's home, affected by nightmare illusions, he even tosses food brought in by his grandpa, not recognizing it as he keeps apologizing to Jin-ho, and admits his fault. Jin, who had to look at this, says Jin-ho's name filled with malice. In the PC cafe, Ingyu finds it awkward about Min being with them for the game and thinks he is the gaming type, but is surprised to see his rating be high. After the game, others gather around Min as they talk about the game, while Ingyu teases Jin-ho about the game. An announcement called him to the principal office. In the office, Jin offered the money he had promised along with a contract of support and asked for a favor. Feeling sad about his grandson's condition, he wanted to get rid of the reason for it. He asks for his help one more time, not knowing Jin-ho was outside, listening to everything. He tells him to lie one more time, and that he would support the orphanage, using them to bait him into helping again. This time, Min rejects the offer, saying he doesn't want to regret his actions anymore. As the offer doesn't work, he begins to threaten him, saying weak should live like weak, and Jin-ho agrees, saying that was the reason Sue's head ended up that way. Jin is surprised to see, asking why he was there. Jin-ho tells Min to go back to class. As Jin-ho and Min walks back to class, Jin brings up the new job his parents had gotten and threatens to get them fired again, along with his sister, who might go through some unsavory thing. Jin-ho snaps, hearing that the red demon inside him keeps telling him to kill him and his grandson. As killing intent radiates from Jin-ho, both Min and Jin freeze up, unable to move, as Jin-ho falls for the demon's temptation. He counts down, and the pressure increases until Ga Yu-min appears, halting them. As the pressure disappears, whispers to Jin-ho that he is from Hwang. Noticing the situation, he pushes them to leave the room and whispers that the chairman is waiting for him at the front gate. Jin sits on the ground, stunned, not knowing what had happened when Ga Yu-min calls him. Finally noticing the new arrival, he asks who he is. Ju-min introduces himself, saying someone way on top had assigned him to be deputy chairman. Looking at him surprised, he guessed that the foundation hadn't contacted him yet. Outside in the car, Jin-ho talks with Jing-hoo, who explains what was happening and says the fund would probably go bankrupt due to crippling debt, and the school would be run by an educational foundation. Jin-ho asks him to secretly investigate him, and Jing-hoo smiles, saying knowing what kind of person he is working with was common sense, and asks him to not get upset, saying he was only helping him as a business partner. He admits inside that if he hadn't intervened at the moment, things would have turned out very bad. He gives him the account book and checks fulfilling his part of the deal. He looks at the check and is surprised to see the amount written there. Back at home, Jing-Hoo makes up a story of a lost grandson and his connection, which works on Jin-Ho's parents, which surprises Jin-Ho, who can only give an awkward smile. The father still tries to deny the money, saying he is happy with appreciation, but Jing-Hoo tears up, saying he couldn't do anything for his grandson, so to let him fulfill what he wanted to do for him. In panic, the father tells him not to bow and accepts reluctantly. Outside say his parents must be convinced, and Jin-Ho agrees, but asks again if it is okay to give so much money. Jing-Hoo says it was the price for his life and to not mind it, and he was looking forward to working with him. He tells, as he didn't any means to contact him directly, so wanted to have contact between them. Understanding he wanted to keep eye on him due to concern on his side, agrees to it. The next day he meets with Gyu-min, who introduces himself as his secretary and contacts with chairman. He reports that Myong-gil will be bankrupt by the end of the following day, surprising Jin-Ho. Looking at him, he remembers a conversation with Jing-Hoo. He asks if he was a successor, and Jing-Hoo says there was no reason he couldn't be one and says there was a possibility. He asks him to take care of Jin-Ho like he was serving him. He leaves for school after hearing the report, and Gyu-min says he will meet him at school. Happy being assigned as deputy chairman before he rides off, he asks for one more favor. Min gets news that they found a sponsor as they were on the verge of shutting down, and Jin-Ho replies, as he is surrounded by the kids. As they are eating, he asks why Se-yoon was here, and she replies that she was there for volunteer service hours. He tells Jin-Ho what voluntary service hours were, but Jin-Ho says it didn't make sense to evaluate volunteer work. She asks them about the coming test. While Min is fine with his current grades, Jin-Ho tells him he was planning to study. Se-yoon just signs, hearing such a laid-back response. But Min interjects that Jin-Ho had pretty good grades, though he had troubles after the accident. She offers a bet to Jin-Ho, and he accepts after thinking for some time. Gyu-min is sure who Jin-Ho is. He was a relative of the chairman, and the chairman was careful when dealing with him. He remembers the feeling he got at the principal's office, but nothing special happened ever since. He isn't sure why he was assigned this job, but smiles, hoping to keep doing it. On the result board, students gather to look at their ranking. Jin-Ho has a conflicted look as he looks at his result. Se-yoon walks in asking for Jin-Ho's result, as they had made a bet, but is dumbfounded looking at his result. Looking at his result, she feels more awkward for even making a bet, but she wasn't gonna let him off the hook. As others are discussing his grades, he decides to do something and visits Gyu-min for help. Gyu-min asks if he had problems remembering things before the accident, and he admits it. Gyu-min says easy, and he would send the solution to his house. Gyu-min sent an elementary book saying to build everything from scratch, giving him a week to finish it. Jin-Ho remembered his master saying the necessity of fundamentals, and decided to aim for one's position in CSAT in the coming year. Times passed after the new goal. He persuaded his parents to use money and move to a new house. They opened a cafe and quit their jobs. Min decided to become a pro gamer with the financial stability of an orphanage. 50 days before he reached 11th grade material, Jae-min says he had to cover 12th grade material before time's up. He had been doing key meditation when he could, but it didn't help with mental health. He walks out of the room, saying there was a celebration. They meet up and congratulate Min debut as a pro. After eating, they walk home, talking about pro gaming. Min asks if Jin-Ho was aiming for Hanguk University, as his grades were back up. But Jin says he would go to Kyung University as it was closer. Se-yoon says his score was nowhere enough AFG of the place, and Jin-Ho just says it wouldn't be a problem. Jin-Ho notices something and looks into the alley as other keeps walking. Se-yoon talks about the university while fighting and saying she won't forgive him if he didn't make it, but finally notices he wasn't there. Jin-Ho walked into the alley to see a guy standing surrounded by a fallen guy. He asked who Jinho was, but Jinho just the people who could use martial arts existed in this era as well, which surprised the guy. He took a stance and asked who he was. Jinho just say he was someone who knew about martial arts and ask who trained him, but the guy refuses to answer. Minho always wondered why ki-based martial arts didn't exist, but the answer was they were hiding in shadows. He could sense ki in the guy and guessed he must have been trained systematically. Wanting to test him, he asked to attack as normal people might have been boring. He strikes, but Jinho easily dodges, jumping above him, but the guy spin, and with a backhand, which is easily blocked while giving his advice. The guy tries to axe kick with full force, but Jinho is disappointed with the degradation of martial arts in the modern world. He takes the hit without a flinch, and after understanding his capability, he lets him go. The guy walks away, saying they would meet again, and Jinho replies he looks forward to it with a smile. Hearing Seyun's angry call, he tries to normal but gets smacked on the head. Mine asks if beat-up guys behind him was his doing, but he denies, but others don't believe him. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.